Hello everyone and welcome to another video. As you can see from the title, this is going to be the top 10 YouTube or the top 10 list from YouTube reviewers for spring fragrances. What I went ahead and did was I compiled the list from 2012, looked at everyone's top 10 list for spring of 2012, compiled it together and took out what were the most mentioned fragrances, just compiled a huge entire list, assigned ratings, and saw where people put different fragrances within different sections of their list. So for example, if a fragrance was mentioned in the number 1 spot, it got a higher rating than if a fragrance was mentioned in the number 10 spot of somebody's list. So I went ahead, did all that, compiled the list. The purpose of this list is to help anyone who actually needs to purchase fragrances for this upcoming spring season. Well, I know a lot of you go ahead and watch these top 10 lists, watch reviewers, and try to figure out what they could recommend for it. And these lists are ultimately supposed to help you to more easily make a decision, figure out what to buy, what is the top choice for YouTube reviewers, kind of as an overall consolation. I highly encourage you to still look at other reviewers' top 10 lists individually. They explain the reason for their choices and everything like that, but this is literally just these top 10 lists. Now, this format is slightly different than I've done these in the past. Instead of listing them off one by one and taking longer, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to flash and show the list for about 30 seconds, talk to it a little bit, and then move on, okay? So do what you wish with the list. So let's go ahead and start with the first list. First list that we have here is the most mentioned designer fragrances. Here's the list. The number 1 most mentioned designer fragrance was Chanel's Edition Blanche. And that wasn't surprising. The only surprise really to me was L'Homme and Dior Homme, really, just because I kind of figure them more for the fall, but they're perfectly fine for the spring. Outside of that, these fragrances were really mentioned the absolute most times among the designer fragrances, okay? So let's move on to the niche most mentioned list. Here's the list. So Creed is actually pretty popular amongst this list. There really were no surprises among this. The only real surprise that I guess I had was that Green Irish Tweed wasn't in the number 1 spot, wasn't the top spot. It was actually Creed's Aventus. That really surprised me, just because everyone really thinks of Green Irish Tweed as the number 1 quintessential spring fragrance. So the fact that it wasn't number 1 was really the only surprise. But outside of that, I mean, number 2 can't really beat that. Rose 31, I didn't realize that many people liked Rose 31, but they do. So, but here is the list, and these are the most mentioned niche fragrances. So, let's move on to the most mentioned fragrances, period. List. So, Aventus took top dog spot. Overall, niche fragrances dominated this list. There was only 3 fragrances: Roadster, Terre de Hermès, the Eau de Toilette version, and Edition Blanche were the only ones that obviously weren't niche, weren't more on the super expensive side. So overall, even the most mentioned niche dominated this, which is different from most of the other lists that I have, right? So let's move on to the rated or the ratings of fragrances. Again, this is simply compiled by me assigning values to something, giving it a higher value if it scored number 1 on someone's list, and giving it a lower value if it scored like number 10 on a list. I mean, still good, the fact that it was rated, but overall. And I think it had to be mentioned a minimum of 3 times. So here's the first list, the highest rated designer fragrances. Edition Blanche at number 1, no real surprise there. The one thing to really take away though is Edition Blanche was not only the highest rated fragrance, but it was mentioned the most times from the previous list. So infer with that what you want. Edition Blanche is an excellent fragrance. Other than that, no real surprises. A new L'Homme Sport, a top dog. Dior Homme was a little bit of a surprise actually. Again, a little bit of a darker fragrance, but it was higher rated, or rated pretty high whenever it did appear. So that's with that list. Now let's move on to the niche list. Highest rated niche. Looking at the top 5, Creed dominated. 1 through 5, all Creed. Royal Oud, Millésime Imperial, D'Amalfi, Virgin Island Water, Aventus, Green Irish Tweed just outside of it. Creed dominated the highest rated 4 lists. Yes, Creed definitely up there. So what you can infer from something like this is Creed has excellent fragrances for the warm weather or for spring. So definitely look into it if you're looking into a niche house. All right. And the highest overall rating for fragrances here. Again, Creed dominated. Edition Blanche did break top 5, but overall Creed is just everywhere in this list. And niche overall, outside of Riverside Drive, make up 8 out of 10 of the choices. So out of the highest rating, these make top ratings whenever they do appear. So here's your list and here's that list. Overall, the spring fragrances had the most variation out of any type of fragrances. When it comes to spring, people really like to reach out and encompass a lot of fragrances, more so than winter, winter, fall. I haven't done summer yet, but looking at the summer choices, it looks like the same way. That spring is pretty much the king in terms of variety. So I think overall there were close to, 300 different fragrances named, or 200. I don't know. I forgot the exact number. I may be way off on that, but yes. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free. Leave a comment down below. Send me a message. Do whatever you got to do. I hope this helps you. Thank you. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.